What do you say, everybody, and welcome into Monday Night Quarterback. We do it right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like and subscribe as you hang out with us. Really easy to do. Thumbs up if you're enjoying it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel or wherever you might be watching tonight. We really appreciate you being here. I'm Mick Gillespie. He's Tony Tsoukalas. He's the Bama Insider beat writer. He follows the Crimson Tide on a daily basis, and we're going to talk about what's going on right now. 3 practices in, and the Crimson Tide are getting ready for Miami to open up the season. Tony, first off, great to see you. We got a lot of audio from people we don't really hear from a lot in the little media day that they had this year. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to kind of be back in camp. It's nice to be able to go to practices, Mick. I mean, we haven't been able to do that in 2 years. And so we're not getting to go to every single one of them, but it is kind of neat to be back out there and watch them practice. You feel closer to the team, even if it's just 15 minutes, right? It's you can kind of see some things and kind of get to know some stuff.
Let's get right into it. I'm going to let Nick Saban talk here, and then you and I are going to just kind of chew on this a little bit. But Jaleel Billingsley, big part of this offense coming back, one of the weapons who returns from last year's championship team. Tight end, I think about as good of an offensive tight end as there is in the game. And this is what Nick Saban was asked yesterday, and I want to get your thoughts on it.
And Nick, Jaleel Billingsley is a guy who you used more and more as the season seemed to go along last year. I'm curious how you feel like his skill set might fit into what you guys want to do offensively this year. And what is it you're still hoping to see from him this preseason in terms of growth and then kind of getting to where you think he can be given that skill set?
Well, I think that has a lot to do with his level of commitment that I talked about before in terms of doing the right things, developing as a player. He does have a lot of ability. He can be a positive contributor on the team, but he's also got to buy into the, principles and values of the team and be a good teammate and do the things that everyone else in the organization does so that he has the respect of his teammates. And we're certainly trying to help him do that. And hopefully, he'll be back out there with us in a few days. And we'll see how that all develops.
Well, there you go, Tony. Not a good look there for Billingsley when coach is saying, hey, maybe we'll see him back out there again. I didn't even know he wasn't there.
Yeah, well, fortunately for Alabama fans, he was back in practice today. He was taking part in drills with the tight end. So, I'm going to chalk this up into an early preseason lesson learned. I think, there's, Nick Saban talked about basically how Jaleel Billingsley needed to buy into the program and be dedicated. He's a junior now, and he's going to be the leader of that unit. So Alabama's going to be expecting more than just, production on the field. They're going to need him to be somewhat of a leader off the field. I wonder if this was just Nick Saban kind of laying the law down, setting an example, and really kind of demanding the leadership that, he expects from Billingsley at this position.
Yeah, it's a good question. I never suspected that he wouldn't be there because I think, and I told you this off the air today, that if it was a serious situation, I don't think Coach would have brought it up in a press conference, Coach Saban, but he did. And I think what he's doing is he's, like you said, I think you nailed it. I mean, he's definitely calling Billingsley out for leadership. And if Alabama's going to repeat, you figure he's going to be a part of it. The other thing that we learned yesterday was the status on some injured players. One guy who we know has a ton of talent, like Billingsley, is LeBron Ray. Here's what Coach Saban had to say about Ray, and then I want to get your thoughts on this guy and what he means to the team and kind of moving forward with his stat.
I think LeBron Ray has a pretty significant groin injury that he kind of got toward the end of the summer. That may keep him out for a couple weeks. But hopefully, we'll get him back and he'll be confident in his ability to play. And we'll just have to wait and see day to day how that goes.
It doesn't feel like Ray's been healthy, but when he has been in there, he's been such an impact maker.
Yeah, he's a guy that's got all the talent in the world. It's just a matter of, staying on the field. And that's something he hasn't been able to do. He hasn't had really a full season. Either he was a reserve or, we've been expecting him to step up maybe the last 3 years, but one injury or the other, kind of seems like he's, hasn't had that ability. It's not necessarily his fault. It's just really bad luck. And sometimes people get bitten with that injury bug and they never really recover. We'll see how this goes. I mean, a couple weeks, maybe he's slow to start the season. Maybe he can progress from this and catch fire late in the year. But this is a really important year for LeBron Ray, because it's a draft year. I mean, this is his last chance of really making that kind of impact. So I hate it for him, because this is such an important season for him. It'd be like, if Brian Robinson got hurt. There's certain players on this team that you really hate to see them go down, because every snap and every game is going to be so crucial for their draft stock. And LeBron Ray was a guy with a lot to gain. We'll see what he's able to kind of do, and we'll see how long this keeps him back. How much of a stumbling block this is for him to overcome. Hopefully for his sake, he's able to shake it off and finally, put together somewhat of a full season. We're just going to have to see. It's definitely not the start he would have asked for at all.
Trey Sanders back at practice. Do you have an update on any other injuries as far as Alabama's concerned going through the beginning of camp?
I think Trey Sanders, it's one thing. He is back in practice. Let's see how he is when he gets to full contact. I think that's really the question. He looks like he's moving out pretty well during drills. The hips look fine, but we're only seeing him from a distance, and we're seeing him. They just wore shells for the first time today. They're not dressed out in full pads. They're not full contact at all. So we'll see how much he's able to participate and what he's able to really do once practices kind of look more game-like. The other guy, that's kind of battling an injury bug is Malachi Moore, but he seems like he's out participating in drills as well. Obviously, we haven't seen LeBron Ray. Braylon Ingram is another guy we haven't seen. Nick Saban didn't address him, but he's a guy that's been missing. Another defensive lineman, kind of more of a reserve guy. But yeah, and then we haven't seen Xavier Williams, the wide receiver. I don't know if he's really going to have a spot on this team or a place in this team. I don't know what his plans are. He's kind of the mystery. He's not been at practice. He's not in the transfer portal. Nobody really knows, but it doesn't seem like he's part of the Tide's plans this season at the receiver position. But other than that, I think that pretty much covers where we're at roster wise.
Hey guys, let me remind you that Monday Night Quarterback is brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums, right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. When Tony's in the press box doing his thing, he can walk outside and look, and there they are, right across the street. I mean, really, it's almost like on the same street, right over there by Bryant-Denny. But just a really cool place to come and stay if you're in Tuscaloosa, and you can book those during game day and non-game day weekends and days. And I know there's a lot of people that love to come to campus and check it out. Well, this is definitely the place that you're going to want to see. Obviously, the rooftop there, the Sky Club, I mean, is just going to be about the best place that you can do anything now in Tuscaloosa. So we appreciate them, Westgate Luxury Condominiums, for being a big part of Monday Night Quarterback here on Bama Insider. And as you hang out, thumbs up and subscribe as Tony and I talk about the Crimson Tide. All right, we're on the offense right now, right? No, but we're about to transition there. And what I want to talk about here is, first off, the relationship between Bill O'Brien, who, Tony, to me, was very impressive in the press conference that he had yesterday, and then Doug Marrone, who I think is just a really fantastic coach. And those guys are both great friends, and they're coaching at Alabama.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, you mentioned him a little bit earlier, but what's it been like getting a chance to work with Coach Marrone again, given the longstanding friendship you guys have had dating back to the Georgia Tech days?
Yeah, it's been awesome. He and I go way back, like you said. I think it's pretty well documented. Our wives were college roommates. We're best friends, and he's been just somebody that's always been a great resource for me. And then to have the opportunity in our careers, to work together at the University of Alabama for Coach Saban, I think that's a pretty cool thing. And
there you go, Tony. Sorry, I kind of cut into you a little bit, but
no, you're fine. I was just going to kind of say,
pick it right back up.
Yeah, I was going to say some of the same things that Bill was saying. I mean, look, their wives were college roommates. How crazy is that? And they end up together in Tuscaloosa. It's be really cool to work with your best friend and then to kind of get reunited, and then also on top of that get to work with one of the best coaches of all time, the best college coach probably ever. So, I mean, I think they both kind of realize that they're in such a great situation, and they're kind of counting their blessings right now, and just kind of enjoying the process of kind of this part in their careers. I think both of these coaches are probably going to move on to bigger, better things. But at the moment, Alabama's fortunate to have, two head coach quality guys coaching position groups.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, when you think about the coach power that Nick Saban is able to bring in now to Tuscaloosa, when he loses his staff every year, it seems like to other schools, then all of a sudden these guys come in, and this year to me is one of the most impressive groups ever. You had a chance to ask a question. Do you want me to play it for everyone to hear you in action at the press conference with Bill?
If you want.
How do you see that offense adapting around Bryce's skill set, and does he compare to a quarterback that you faced or that you've coached in the past?
I don't really get into comparisons. Everybody I've coached has been very, very different. Whether it was Tom Brady in New England or, the guys I've coached over the years, obviously Deshaun Watson in Houston, Ryan Fitzpatrick in Houston, Christian Hackenberg, Matt McGloin at Penn State. These guys that I've coached over the years, everybody brought a little bit of a different skill set each year. And you've got to do what's best for not only them, but also the players around them. So whether it's the receivers, tight ends, the backs, the offensive line, that all plays out during training camp. You have an idea of how that's going to play out after spring practice, but now this is when the real deal starts in training camp, and you really start to see what your foundation offensively is going to be. Again, it's Alabama offense, and that's what we're running, and we've really enjoyed, especially like Coach Marone, myself, Coach Gillespie, Coach Svoboda. We've really enjoyed learning this offense and being able to coach the players in this offense.
Well, there you go, Tony. You asked the question, and you got a great answer.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like Bill O'Brien said, he's coached so many different styles of quarterbacks that I think that sets up really well for Alabama, because he's coached when you think about Bill O'Brien, you probably think Tom Brady, New England Patriots, right? But he's also coached Deshaun Watson, and he's coached guys that he can develop a pocket passer, he can develop a running quarterback, and Bryce is going to be a little bit of both of those. And I think really what it's about for Bill O'Brien and Bryce Young is just to kind of gain the trust of one another, and just kind of work off each other. And it's going to be a learning process for both of them. But I think both of them have a lot to work with. From Bill O'Brien, he's got a great quarterback, and then from Bryce Young, I think he's got a great offensive mind. So I think they're going to work well together.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and that's the big question with this offense. I mean, we've heard from Bill O'Brien a little bit, from Nick Saban about Jaleel Billingsley. Alabama really needs guys like Billingsley to step up, because this is Bryce Young's first ride at being the man, the guy that's running this offense. We know what he brings to the table, what he was able to do in high school. We saw him a little bit last year. I wasn't that impressed last year. It seemed like he held the ball a long time. He was sacked a lot. But the 8A game, he was much better. He was the MVP of that game. Now he's working with a different offensive coordinator. But you talk about guys that have been in the trenches before. These guys bring a ton of experience. And, when I look at this offense, and I mean, you can kind of get into it too, I feel like Alabama's going to have to run the ball early and maybe take some pressure off of Bryce Young as he gets confident. But you couldn't ask for better coaching.
Yeah, and I think, fortunately, it looks like the offensive line is kind of gelling already in fall camp. I mean, you never really get to see them all at once, but if you can kind of like piece it together, kind of, there's a puzzle. They go three at a time. It looks like it's Evan Neal, Javion Cohen, Chris Owens, Emil Ekiyor. And right now, at the moment, it looks like it's Kendall Randolph. I know it's probably going to surprise some people, but he's a veteran guy in there at that right tackle position. Who knows if he holds on to that spot? Maybe it goes to J.C. Latham. But either way, I think you've got like a solid group there. So if you're going to lean on the running game with Brian Robinson and possibly Trey Sanders now, Jace McClellan, you need that offensive line. It looks like they have that kind of push. I really like Emil Ekiyor at the guard spot, and I'm really liking Javion Cohen at the other guard spot. I think you got two big guys that can really, provide some push in the running game. Today, Evan Neal, the left tackle, he said that he lost 15 pounds. He feels a little bit lighter on his feet. Evan Neal's 6'7". Now he's 345 pounds. So he's still no small dude. But he's already really athletic at 360. At 345, I'd like to see, how even more athletic he could be. So that's an exciting thing on the left side of the line as well. I'm expecting that unit to gel pretty well, and Alabama should be able to run behind it. It should also keep Bryce on his feet as well. And he's still got a lot of targets to work with too. You mentioned Billingsley, but there's also John Mechie, Javon Baker, Slade Bolden, Jamison Williams. So there's a lot of targets to work with.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, Evan Neal to me is the star of the offensive line coming back from last year, right? And he's so good. And now he's, lost weight and he's still a big guy, right? Mm-hmm. And then you got all of these freshmen that have come in with high accolades and, 5 stars, some of them. And the guys that have been here are going to fight hard for those spots, because if they don't, someone else is going to get it. And that competition is definitely going to help Alabama. But the offensive line is going to make or break this team.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's most teams. I mean, look, even last year's team, I think you could talk about all of the skill players and they all won awards, but a lot of people would argue that the heart and soul of last year's team was the offensive line. You had the best left tackle and the best center on the same team. And then you had, a really strong guard play in Deontay Brown and Emil Ekiyor. And so, and then you also had Evan Neal on the other side of the tackle. So you had a great offensive line last year. I think you're going to have a great offensive line this year. So we'll see where that takes Alabama. It should definitely keep them in contention to have another great offense. They should, they have all the tools now and they'll have the time with this line. So it's really going to be, how do the new skill players adjust to their increased roles?
Right. And we know, look, Brian Robinson finally gets the opportunity to be the guy. But you look behind him and you got the other Robinson, you got McClellan, you got Sanders, you got Wheaton. Am I missing someone?
Yeah, well, Keelan Robinson's no longer with the team, but so behind Brian Robinson, you have Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams. You also got Trey Sanders.
Williams. Yeah,
Trey Sanders, and then of course Kamar Wheaton, the 5-star freshman as well.
Yeah, so you're talking about a lot of backs and a lot of competition there. But Brian Robinson brings in the experience. I've said it before. I can't wait to see McClellan just take a bigger role on this offense.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, how he does. He's been kind of third in line. I think, sometimes that goes by seniority during the running back drills. But, you've been having Brian Robinson, then Trey Sanders, then Jace McClellan, then Roydell Williams, and then Kamar Wheaton. But that's also, pretty much listing them in order of their year as well. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, Jace McClellan, he's going to be probably competing for that number 2 back slot behind Brian Robinson. And I know a lot of people are expecting him to have a big season.
Let's switch over to defense and listen to a little Pete Golden as he talked in the press conference. We don't see this guy a lot. It's a rare occasion when he pops out from coaching defense and talks to us. And I'm going to play this and we'll kind of get into this a little bit.
To me, Will flashed a lot last year, right? And made a lot of negative yardage plays because he's an extremely good pass rusher, right? But there's some things in the run game, right, that we're still cleaning up. Very heavy-handed, can strike. Coach Sal does a really good job of them. But I think the big thing when you got a really good player right on base downs, you still got to play within the scheme, right? I've got a gap responsibility. I've got a job to do, right? And then, all right, now let's stop the run and have some fun. And let's get on third down and let's isolate you, right? Our best pass rusher on their worst protector. Hey, let's go win that one-on-one.
Yeah, okay, so he's talking about Will Anderson, but I just love him. He's just like
right?
your typical football coach, man. Like, give this guy a little Gatorade and maybe some Mountain Dew and set him loose, right?
Right, right. Yeah, I know. I think I counted. He said it right 108 times during the 14 minutes he talked with us, and that's just by my count. But it's fun to listen to him. We can make fun of his word, his filler word or whatever. But he knows his football, man. Listening to him break down defense is like poetry. He really knows his stuff, and I think, you know, it's going to translate onto the field. I think you've got people that have been there on defense. They're going to be able to understand what he's throwing at them. And then he's got all the talent in the world to work with. He mentioned guys like Will Anderson. There's also Chris Allen on the edge. You've got, you know, Henry TuaTo'o and Christian Harris in the middle. You've got Josh Jobe, Jordan Battle, Malachi Moore in the secondary. I mean, so this defensive unit is going to be one of the best, if not the best, in the nation. If they're able to kind of execute and kind of soak up Golding's defensive scheme, which I truly believe that he's going to have the right scheme called. Yeah. This could be a really special unit.
Yeah, look, I agree. I mean, we're going to find out if you can win championships with defense anymore, because this defense is as good as I've ever seen at Alabama, at least on paper. And it's because you look at the starters and then you look at the backups and you could flip them and you really wouldn't lose a lot. I mean, how many times have you seen that?
You definitely have a lot of depth. I mean, look at the cornerback position. You know, Jalen Armour-Davis is working with the ones, but, you know, we've seen a lot of good things from Kool-Aid McKinstry, the freshman. You look at that defensive line. Yeah, that's where, you know, you've got guys that are in the 2 deep of the defensive line, possibly even in the 3 deep, that you could all step up as starters. Same with the inside linebacker and the outside linebackers. I mean, the fact that you have Shane Lee and Jalen Moody as possibly your second team inside linebackers, that's just crazy, because I think there's a lot of teams that would absolutely love to have those guys as their 2 starting linebackers. The same thing when you look at guys like Chris Braswell and Drew Sanders being on, you know, quote unquote second teamers or whatever. That's nuts. Those are, you know, 4- and 5-star guys. So Alabama has the depth. You know, you always have to have that on defense. God forbid, there's probably going to be some kind of injury. You know what I'm saying? Like, it happens every year. There's always some kind of injury. But Alabama has the depth that, you know, pretty much every position that they can probably withstand some of those injuries too. So that, you know, just because there's players that aren't starting necessarily at the moment, they have to be ready as well. Because, you know, it's always, you know, as Alabama says, I know it sounds cliche, right? But just next man up. And Alabama has the ability to do next man up better than most.
Give us a thumbs up, subscribe as you hang out with us. Monday Night Quarterback. He's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillespie, and we're hanging out with you here on the Alabama rival site, Bama Insider. Our show's brought to you by Wingate Luxury Condominiums, right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium, where you can feel the touchdowns from in there, because the ground shakes right there next to Bryant-Denny. What a different year for Pete Golding. Last year, we're doing this show at this time, and everybody wants to fire the guy. Alabama had to fight to keep him from going to Texas, along with Robinson, right? Didn't Robinson run over there? Now he's with the Longhorns, the new SEC Longhorns that we're going to have here in the near future. At least that's what we were hearing at the time. And he elected to stay at Alabama and work with Coach Saban.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Pete Golding gets a little bit of a bad rap from Alabama fans. Look, he led the nation, or not the nation, he led the SEC in points per game, and he was ranked in the top 3 of the conference at pretty much every major statistical category on defense. So yes, there was a few, you know, mishaps, and there was a few just like total breakdowns. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to go back and watch that Ole Miss game from an Alabama perspective. And the SEC championship game against Florida had its moments where things got out of control. But other than that, I mean, Alabama was in control of every single game. That it wasn't really a worry. And you're battling against today's offense. It's a lot different than maybe in 2011 when Alabama put up those historic type numbers. Pete Golding was asked about those expectations, and he still expects to, you know, hold offenses under 13 points a game. That's a lot to ask in today's offense, you know, with these high spread, you know, lots of passing and, you know, just really spread out attacks, high scoring, fast paced kind of attacks. It's a lot to ask, but that's his goal. He holds Alabama to the #1 standard, and he's not accepting anything less. And let's see if he can do it, because Alabama is going to have one of the best units out there. Even if they don't, though, I think he's going to be able to, you know, put up an average or hold opponents to an average that Alabama is going to be able to score more points than. And ultimately, Mick, that's the important thing. You know, if Alabama scores one more point than every one of their opponents, they'll have a great season. So
yeah,
I have faith that Pete Golding's going to do it. I think this is going to be the best defense he puts together. A lot of that will be how well the players soak it up and how well they buy in. But you've got enough experienced players on this defense. You have to imagine they'll do that.
Well, Tony, before we scoot over and talk with Andrew Bone about recruiting, what are you working on and what can we read at BamaInsider.com?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff on the site to read right now. We had a story on Pete Golding, like we were just talking about. We've had one on Bill O'Brien. We've had one, just on Trey Sanders as well. And we'll have all the practice reports moving forward as well. So keep it locked on Bama Insider, and follow me on Twitter, follow us on Twitter, and then also join our message board. Because everything we're talking about on this show, that's what the message board is like as well. So we'd love to have you over there as well.
He's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillespie, Monday Night Quarterback. We do it each Monday night. And coming up here, we're going to talk with Andrew Bone. But first, guys, let me just tell you one more time about the presenting sponsor of Monday Night Quarterback, and that is Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Tony, this looks like a place you'd hang out, doesn't it?
I think it's a place anyone would want to hang out. It's very luxurious, and it's the location. You can't beat it, especially on a game day. You're literally, people say stones throw away, right, Mick? But you could literally throw a stone and then hit the stadium from this place. It's right across the corner.
It is. I mean, this is next level luxury. And I honestly, it's going to be a fun place to hang out. We're going to be there after Alabama football games this year when we do our post-game show here on Bama Insider. All right, Tony, thanks. Hey, guys, welcome to Monday Night Quarterback. And again, it's always great to talk to our good buddy, Andrew Bone. He's the guru of Alabama recruiting. Like and subscribe as you hang out with us on the Bama Insider YouTube channel or wherever you're watching right now. And don't forget, Monday Night Quarterback comes on every Monday night, and it's presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. You can rent these anytime you're in Tuscaloosa. Game day, non-game day, you're coming to town, you want to hang out, you want to feel the vibe of the best campus in the country, you want to feel those championships, you want to smell the stadium dogs, you want to see the strip, all that stuff. You can do it at Westgate, and the rooftop is amazing. Inside the place is awesome. This is luxury at its best in Tuscaloosa. And again, it's right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. And we really appreciate having them as the sponsor of Monday Night Quarterback. Bone, right now is that time where players are starting to make these lists. They say, okay, well, look, I got a top 10, or I got a top 5, or I got a top 3. That's kind of where you're at right now as far as players starting to take that next step.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what a lot of people kind of failed to realize, and I'm guilty of it myself, we saw all these kids schedule their official visits during the summer. And, as every year in the past, they take all their official visits. What do you do after your official visits? You make your decision. Now, we've seen a lot of kids make their college commitments already, but we've also seen a lot of kids who have said that they were going to make a commitment after their official visit, push things back because these official visits were their first visits. They didn't go to, games last fall. They didn't go to junior days. They didn't go to spring games. They didn't take summer visits, just summer unofficial visits. Their summer visits were their official visits. And now things got a little bit pushed back. They want to go to some games. They saw a lot of schools that they really like, and schools coming after them pretty hard, whether that's, Alabama and Clemson and Georgia or USC or Florida. They're seeing these schools for the very first time. They're getting, in-person interaction with these coaches. They're loving it. They want to get it a little bit more, and they want to go to these games this fall. They want to be on the sideline. They want to be in the action. They want to be in the locker room after a big win, and that's something that happens. And they also want guys like Coach Saban to come into their house, come into their hometown. Maybe they Coach Saban's never been to their hometown before, or sat down in their family's living room, and getting a chance to have your entire family over there, from your grandparents to aunts and uncles to cousins to your siblings and your parents. You finally get an opportunity to be able to do that, especially with these top tier level guys, you know, your tier one type guys that, you know, you're waiting for until signing day. You know, you're going after them. You're always going to hold a spot for them. You're willing to wait on those type of guys. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of those guys holding back, waiting to make decisions. But you know, we have seen some big decisions already for Alabama this summer.
Well, one of those guys that we've been paying close attention to, Bone, is Jake Pope. It seems like he's always about to commit and then pulls back. What's the latest on Jake Pope?
Yeah, you know, this is more of a you know, decision with Jake. I think a lot of people, you know, they see a kid keeps pushing things back. They're wondering, you know, what's going on with him. I think with Jake, you know, just not sure. I think Alabama's in pretty good shape with him, but you know, North Carolina, you know, continues to recruit him, treating him as a top priority recruit for their recruiting class. You know, Georgia, you know, got him in on an unofficial visit last weekend. So schools are still pushing hard for him, and you know, even though, you know, we felt like Alabama was in good shape, and I still feel that way. I still feel like Alabama is in the driver's seat for Jake Pope. I think he's just wanting to wait. I think he's wanting to go to some games this fall, and enjoy that experience, as we just kind of talked about. You know, even though he was looking like he was going to make a decision before the end of the summer, it looks like he's going to wait until a little bit into the fall, because he started fall practice. All these kids now really focusing on their upcoming senior season. They've kind of put recruiting on the back burner a little bit. So most of these guys, if they haven't made a decision by mid-August, they tend to wait a little bit longer because they're so focused in on their senior season. Some of them will make decisions in September, October, but a lot of them will wait until that early signing period before they make that commitment, because they can go to a lot of games and enjoy that experience. So we'll just kind of wait and see what happens with Jake. As of right now, I think he's on hold. You know, he used to tell us, you know, starting in in late June, in 2 weeks I'll have my decision. You know, a few weeks later, 2 weeks I'll have my decision. A few weeks later, 2 weeks. Now it's you know, I'm on hold. You know, not expecting anything to happen right now, but we could see something happen maybe sometime in September.
Alabama's got great running backs, and they're always trying to restock. One guy that committed in June was Levon Moss, and now he's taken other visits. Is this something to worry about?
Yeah, I think anytime you know, you see recruits that are committed you know, to your program, and they start taking other visits, and not just one visit or two visits, you're talking, you know, multiple visits to you know, to particular programs. And in the case of Le'Veon Moss, you know, he's visited LSU a few times, visited TCU, visited Texas A&M twice, visited Ole Miss. He made the rounds after his commitment to Alabama, so it automatically makes people think, well, he's not solid with his commitment. He's going to decommit. He's going to flip. He's going to go somewhere else. But one place he's not going to go is the school that he's committed to. And I think that's, you know, sometimes unfair, because kids, you know, once again, they were taking their first visits this year. They were going out to places they've never seen before. As of right now, Moss is still committed to Alabama. It's not like he's come out and said, hey, I'm you know, not 100% on my commitment. You know, it's not like he's come out and said, I'm flipping, or, you know, I'm leaning towards somewhere else. I'll never forget Derrick Henry back in, I think it was like the spring of 2013, you know, came out and said, and he was committed to Georgia. He said, I feel like Alabama is a better fit for me for my college future. And he was still committed to Georgia during that time period. Of course, obviously, we know what happened. But it's not like Le'Veon Moss is coming out saying, oh, LSU or Texas A&M or one of these other schools is a better fit for me. Of course, he's not really talking to anybody in the media, and he hasn't really talked to anybody since his commitment. But as of right now, still committed to Alabama. So I wouldn't give up on him this yet. You know, I think Alabama's, you know, certainly talking to him every single week, continuing to you know, make sure he feels comfortable with his commitment to Alabama. And that doesn't mean Alabama's not recruiting other running backs. You know, we've seen some other running backs that have visited Tuscaloosa this past summer, and you know, some of those guys have committed elsewhere. You know, Alabama does have a commitment from Emmanuel Henderson, even though, yeah, I think Emmanuel can, you know, play just about anywhere. You know, he's a tremendous athlete. He's 6 foot 1.5, almost 200 pounds. So, he's a long, lean, very, athletic type kid that you could spread him out at wide receiver. I don't think he's going to end up playing defensive back. I think he's more, as an offensive guy, but he's certainly a guy that, you can use him in multiple roles on the offensive side of the ball. So they certainly want to keep Le'Veon Moss happy. They want to keep him on the recruiting board. Another guy that I'd kind of keep an eye on, just in case anything happens, is not Jamarion Miller. We talked about Jamarion. We'll talk about Jamarion Miller in a second. But Javonte Barnes out of Las Vegas visited Alabama back in June. Doesn't really talk a lot, and one of these kids that just kind of keeps quiet on the recruiting front, but visited Alabama, measured in about 6 feet tall, on around about 200 pounds. So that's another guy at the running back position that could be very intriguing for Alabama down the road, and certainly somebody that we're going to keep an eye on. But in terms of guys that are committed elsewhere, Jamarion Miller, had Alabama on his short list. He's committed to Texas. Could end up visiting Alabama down the road, but as of right now, I think he's going to end up sticking with Texas. Nicholas Singleton, who committed to Penn State, kind of thought that he was going to end up going to Penn State or stay a little bit closer to home throughout his process, and not really thinking he's going to flip it all. But if I was watching any other running backs right now, I'd certainly keep an eye on Javonte Barnes out of Las Vegas just in case.
Yeah, let's talk about guys who are committed elsewhere. You brought up a few names. What about Damani Jackson? He's another guy that's committed to USC. And Alabama's ability, you mentioned Las Vegas, to go out to the West Coast, to go out to Texas and bring in all of these really top-notch players. It's been amazing to see Nick Saban and his staff kind of expand Alabama's recruiting base.
Yeah, Alabama has done such a tremendous job recruiting the West Coast, the Northeast, South Florida, Texas, the East Coast. These are certain specific areas that we never really saw Alabama recruiting prior to Coach Saban's arrival, and not just recruiting those areas, but landing the top dogs in those areas, almost on a yearly basis. So, they've certainly done a great job in specific areas, but Las Vegas, for some reason, they just haven't been able to crack that one yet. So if they could, potentially land somebody like Javonte Barnes in this class, it could set them up here in the future as a potential stronghold for Alabama and Vegas. But yeah, there's certainly some guys that are out there that Alabama is continuing to recruit who are committed elsewhere. Damani Jackson, 5-star cornerback, USC commitment, visited Tuscaloosa back in June, plans on returning for an official visit in the fall. So we're keeping a close eye on his recruitment. As of right now, still pretty solid with his commitment to USC, but obviously he'll be watching to see how the Trojans do on the field this fall. Shamar James committed to Florida, which shocked many back in June when he announced his commitment to Florida over Alabama. We all thought, I think everyone thought that Alabama was in the driver's seat there. They were pushing for him. They don't typically lose out on the in-state kids that they're really going after, that they consider top priorities. And he just decided to go to Florida. So as of right now, I think he's going to stick with Florida. Alabama's going to continue to recruit him. But he seems pretty locked in with his commitment to the Gators at this time. But we'll see if he makes a trip back to Tuscaloosa this upcoming season. We saw Mizzou commitment, defensive lineman Marquise Graciel in Tuscaloosa a couple weekends ago for the cookout. Think he's going to come back for an official visit this fall. But yeah, I think he's pretty much locked in with Mizzou. I just don't see him leaving too far from home. Isaiah Bond, who's also committed to Florida, wide receiver. Also teammates with Jake Pope at Buford High School over in Georgia. He took an official to Alabama back in June. But as of right now, I just see him sticking with Florida. Every year Alabama is able to land a commitment or two who previously committed elsewhere. But as of right now, I just think that most of their targets that they really have a chance to land in this year's recruiting class are uncommitted. So we'll see if any more flips happen. Now, of course, we saw Kobe Prentice reopen his commitment, reopen his decision when he originally committed to Maryland and committed to Alabama. So there's one for you right there, and I'm sure there's probably going to be another one or two down the road.
Well, it just seems like, too, that when Alabama's kind of sitting in the back in recruiting rankings this time of year, all of a sudden you blink and they're at the top. Sometimes we've seen it both ways. Sometimes they just get out to a fast start and they're number one. And then sometimes, like last year, it felt like the momentum just kind of picked up as recruiting went on. And then all of a sudden you turn around and they had the best class ever. So it's hard to really read into it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and you just never know what's going to happen, over the course, of the season as kids start going, coming back in for games this season. They're down on the sideline. They get real emotional. Or Nick Saban, sits down in your home, and there's no way that you can say no to this guy.
Yeah.
There's going to be some guys that are going to pop up.
A lot of rings. He's just got a lot of rings he wears.
That's right. That's why he shows them off, in the office when these kids come in for visits. But there's going to be some guys that we're not talking about right now that are going to jump into the mix down the road. This time last year, we weren't talking about Kamar Wheaton as a realistically being in Alabama's class. We were talking about him, but all signs pointed towards him going to Oklahoma. We weren't talking about JoJo Earl flipping his commitment from LSU to Alabama, or Keanu Coate flipping his commitment from LSU to Alabama. We weren't talking about Jaden Roberts, who was committed to Auburn at the time. All these guys just kind of came in the last week or two of the recruiting cycle. So you just never know what's going to happen over the course of the next few months, especially once the season gets underway, kids take in football games and have their final visits and final conversations with the coaching staff. There's a lot of things that can change. Alabama, top 5 recruiting class right now. They're certainly aiming for that number 1 class once again.
Yep, stability. Kamar Wheaton, you can see his first practice video in an Alabama uniform on Bama Insider, where you're hanging out right now. And make sure you like and subscribe. And we always appreciate the super chats. So hit us up again, Bama Insider right here on YouTube. You can read Bone's work, BamaInsider.com. Bone, before we bid everyone farewell, you have a pretty significant week ahead.
Yeah, I do. Pretty big week. We are going into the hospital. Huh?
Is this a 5-star you're bringing in? I mean,
yeah. This time next week we should have our firstborn, our first son. So it's going to be a pretty exciting week for us. So appreciate all the prayers and any advice anyone wants to give us as we embark on this journey of parenthood coming up here within the next week.
All right. Well, good luck. Good luck to you and the missus. And we're excited to see baby pictures here really soon. And once you become a parent, you know what this is like. You don't have kids. People want to show you baby pictures. You're like, I get these out of my face. As soon as you have a kid, every time somebody's got them, you're like looking on their Facebook page, they're showing you on their phone. So we all wish you the best, Bone. Love you for your great work, and excited for you and your family. And hey, don't forget, guys, Monday Night Quarterback, always presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. We do this every Monday night right here on Bama Insider and the Bama Insider YouTube channel.